In the early days of the Ukraine invasion, a Russian soldier looted a sweet pair of Airpods from an abandoned apartment. Thinking he had scored the catch of the century, he continued on his deployment, passing the time between attacking innocent villages and stealing toilets and washing machines by listening to his favorite tunes. Sweet score, but this guy clearly wasn't very familiar with Apple technology. After discovering the theft, the victim was able to use the Find My Airpods app to track Russian troop movements, forwarding the intel to the Ukrainian military, who then knew exactly which direction the Russians were coming from, and was able to thwart the assault as a result. We don't know exactly what happened to the specific Russian soldier who stole these Airpods, but we do know that the majority of his squad likely met an untimely demise due to this earbud intel, which means, the odds aren't good. Hope the tunes were good though. This is just one in a series of examples of poetic irony, where Russian soldiers have literally sealed their own doom based on the trinkets they decided to loot in Ukraine. On one occasion, Russian soldiers invaded a village and celebrated their victory by consuming an absolutely insane amount of local vodka. They then awoke to find several of their comrades dead, and hundreds horribly sick, apparently being laid out by the poison that the Ukrainian villagers had put in the vodka before making their escape. I guess the Ukrainians figured the odds that a bunch of Russian war criminals would want to loot their vodka were pretty high. And then there's the Russian soldiers who walked through Chernobyl. The nuclear power plant leaking so much radiation that there's an exclusion zone where nobody is allowed to enter for a 20-mile radius, and where the trees grow in unnatural colors due to radiation poisoning. Not only did Russian soldiers go through the area, apparently they took souvenirs with them, stealing radioactive material from a radiation monitoring lab near the facility. At first, there was a concern that the soldiers were going to use the material to make dirty bombs. But as it turned out, it's rumored that they may have used it as a catalyst to boil their water instead, to avoid having to light a fire. Not wanting to give away your position with a campfire makes sense, but boiling your water with radioactive energy is something so ridiculous, you literally just can't make this stuff up. Although I guess it's pretty cool when you drink your special tea and can see straight through your skeleton for the next 12 hours. Russian soldiers gotta pass the time somehow, even if it means they'll never be able to properly pass their urine ever again. In another example, Russians stole local zoo animals, including bizarre ones like raccoons, ostriches, llamas, and even a kangaroo. As it turns out, this was the only way they could find food, because the Russian army hadn't provided them with any. And you could bet they weren't going to eat Ukrainian bread after the poisoned vodka incident. Apparently, though, no one told them what eating strange meat like a kangaroo does to a person down under. The last time their pants looked like that was when they left for a surprise training exercise after selling their combat gear on Russian eBay, only to wake up and find themselves facing a Welcome to Ukraine sign instead. Russian soldiers have been spotted stealing everything from electric scooters to air conditioning units to solar panels to the bones of Prince Grigory Alexandrovich Potemkin. That's right, Potemkin. The Russian field marshal who came up with the idea behind the Potemkin villages. These 18th century villages were basically made of cheap props that Russians could show to outsiders from a distance to make themselves appear more wealthy and more powerful than they really were. And Potemkin villages explain the mindset behind Russia's modern military, which, even today, is largely equipped with fake gear to intimidate people, even though they're apparently barely capable of fighting an actual war. So, yeah, the Russians stole this guy's bones, and this war is just full of ironies. But these bones show that Russian soldiers must truly believe that they need to rescue their compatriots from evil Ukrainian hands. Apparently even compatriots who have been dead for over 200 years. Just one more example of Russia trying to steal Ukraine's history. Oh, but we're not done. How about that time Russian soldiers stole $5 million worth of John Deere tractors? After going to great effort and great expense transporting these tractors to a farm 700 miles away back in Russian territory, they only then discovered that a remote locking system was in place to prevent thieves from turning the equipment on, meaning they sacrificed much of their life savings to transport gear that will never even work. I mean, come on guys, I live in an American city, far from the countryside, with no farm gear for miles around. And even I knew that one. The biggest irony of all is perhaps Russian soldiers stealing things like shampoo, washing machines, and toilets. Apparently, basic hygiene items are Western luxuries that many of them can't get back home. Of course, they didn't think this through very much, because a toilet or a washing machine isn't very useful in a Siberian village where there is no plumbing infrastructure to install it. But like the John Deere tractors, they'll probably figure that one out when they go to install their new Western toilet and find themselves instead having a really crappy day. Now, I get it. You may think these Russian soldiers are loonies, but really, it's not their fault. Many of these soldiers come from Russia's poorest regions, deep in Siberia, with little education and little exposure to modern society. And we have the footage to prove it. That's because one Russian soldier stole a Ukrainian security camera and put it up in his Siberian home as a trophy. He didn't put it outside to watch for intruders, mind you, but literally just set it up right in the middle of his Siberian apartment, probably so that he could show off his glory days of war to his local Siberian buddies. These cameras can work by automatically attaching themselves to any open Wi-Fi network, and so, unbeknownst to the Russian soldier, it was able to connect and begin streaming footage back to its previous Ukrainian owner, who made a live stream out of it, exposing many of the intimate details of the Russian soldier's private life, including several underwear shots, and likely more than a few vodka-fueled incidents of rage. Which, if you think about it, is a pretty accurate parody of the Russian military as a whole. Perhaps what explains all this dumb luck is the fact that the Russians also stole 2,300-year-old Scythian artifacts from a Ukrainian museum. Apparently, Siberia doesn't have a lot of movies, so these guys have never seen what happens to people who steal ancient artifacts. As a punishment, it seems they may have been possessed by the spirit of an ancient Western movie villain, Lex Luthor, first stealing radioactive instruments, and now stealing ancient Scythian treasures. This is starting to sound a lot like the next Indiana Jones movie, Raiders of the Lost Cause. But then again, maybe not, because at least in Indiana Jones, they fought real Nazis. It seems that Russian soldiers are willing to steal everything, from car batteries to cosmetics to pigs. But we shouldn't find this surprising. After all, the Russian military has a long-standing history of theft. For years, they've been stealing everything from their own military gear to their own children's futures. Now that brings us to the sponsor of today's video, Loot Crate. Just kidding. That would be ironic though, right? The real sponsor is Igor's Siberian Plumbing, specializing in conversions of Western equipment to Siberian electrical standards, which just means connect it to your stolen car battery from Ukraine and hope it doesn't explode. And if that's not your preferred power solution, I do hear they have a lot of extra natural gas lying around up there. Apparently, they've been having a hard time finding a buyer. Igor also specializes in converting Siberian outhouses without plumbing into Siberian outhouses that still don't have plumbing, but that come freshly equipped with shiny, used Western porcelain. So hit up my buddy Igor for an extra discounted rate. This is a limited time offer, because I hear Igor is next up for the draft. Aww. Actually, let's be real for a moment. It's pretty bad when one of the main motivations for going to war is to steal trinkets for your children. It's something we'd expect from an ancient Viking warlord, but not from a nation that is invading another under the pretense of liberating their compatriots from an evil regime. When you start looting civilians' possessions, all arguments that this is a war being done to protect your innocent compatriots go right out the door. Russia might say that it's invading regions that democratically elected to be annexed, but apparently their soldiers interpreted that as these people democratically agreeing to have all their stuff stolen. The soldiers are just trying to get them used to life in Putin's Russia, I guess. Far from whatever lies Russia is trying to spin, it's pretty clear that their intentions are simply to loot the best parcels of Ukrainian land for their oligarchs, and the best possessions of the Ukrainian people for their soldiers. The saddest part is that Ukraine is the poorest country in Europe, and Russia still feels the need to steal from them. Then again, this isn't surprising, because this is exactly what Russian rulers have been doing to their own citizens for centuries. In the Ukrainian conflict, we have seen entire convoys with trucks of looted items heading for Belarus, where they are sold on black markets to fill the pockets of Russian soldiers, or packed on trains to be sent back home. And we've seen Russians carelessly looting Ukrainian stores, causing all kinds of reckless damage, only to then turn around and carefully package their selected items to ship them back home to their families. One intercepted phone call from a Russian soldier to his wife back home is very telling. On the call, he tells her that he has stolen some cosmetics from an abandoned Ukrainian home, much to her excitement and delighted praises. But by the end of the call, she is heard to be chiding him for not yet being able to steal her a new bathing suit. Ouch. Her favorite shade of lipstick must be blood red. This is all very ironic, because throughout all of this, Russia has proclaimed that they have a stronger economy than they had at the start of the war, and that they have put the Western economies in check. But going to Ukraine to steal cosmetics and bathing suits? Here in the West, we just go to Walmart for those kinds of things. If Russia's per capita GDP goes up, it'll probably only be because of a sharp decline in the population of their young men, combined with a steady influx of used washing machines and toilets coming in from Ukraine, each accounting for a significant percentage of people's normal annual wages. And yet, Putin will continue to say that the war is a great boon for the Russian people. And just like stolen Ukrainian possessions, the Russian people are uncritically buying this up. In a way, Vladimir Putin has taken Eastern Europe back to the age of the Vikings, where people measure their status not by what they can produce, but by what they can steal. And no matter how you slice it, this is not a strong foundation for future growth. The only question is, how long will it take the Russian people to realize this? This video was made possible by NordVPN. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe and catch these other videos, which I think you'll find interesting and entertaining.